Well, you're right on time for Africa Focus. Good afternoon from where you're watching us from. My name is Joel Church and our sign language interpreter is Tracy Dorcas. Talk to us via social media platforms at Switch TV Kenya, Joel Chacha M on Twitter, as well on Facebook, Switch TV Kenya and Joel Chacha. Send in an SMS via 111 444 111. But first, here stories making headlines. Mozambique IDPs seek shelter after Islamist attack in Palma. Exodus of doctors weakens Tunisian health sector. Negotiations resume on the Ethiopian megadam on the Blue Nile. We begin our focus in northern Mozambique, where hundreds of internally displaced people find shelter in a sports center in Pemba, where more than a week ago, a jihadist staged a deadly raid on the northern Mozambican town of Palma. Many arrived on foot on fishing boats after days of hiding from the attackers. The jihadists reportedly beheaded residents and ransacked buildings in a rampage that forced thousands to seek safety in surrounding forests. The attack is seen as the biggest escalation of the Islamist insurgency ravaging Cabo Delgado province since 2017.
I left my house and went till the sea, yes, till the sea. My wife and my son were in the house. The bandits reached my house. They went inside and killed them.
Aconteceu assim, este bandido ficou 15 horas.
This is what happened in Palma. The bandits stayed there for 15 hours. The population of Palma fled. 8 people died on the boat in the water on their way to Mujane. Another 8 people hid in the bush. People died. The bandits were looking for people. There is deep suffering.
Elsewhere, Abdelwahab Meghribi on the front line against COVID-19 in Tunisia has not been paid for months. This 35-year-old emergency doctor raised readiness to leave his country, searching for better working conditions like most Tunisian doctors.
Abdelwahab despairs over the healthcare system in Tunisia. For him, the situation in Tunisia has become a source of anxiety and anguish.
I am trying to immigrate outside of Tunisia. Why? Because the general situation in Tunisia is not stable economically, socially and politically. Currently, the country has only paid salaries. But in 6 months, 1 year, we don't know.
I
was offered a job in a Gulf country with a salary that is 10 times more than the salary in Tunisia, and the means in the field of health developing strongly in the Gulf countries.
The political quarrels, social tensions, and economic difficulties contribute to the suffocating climate of the country, underlines the doctor. A sign of the malaise of doctors' protests broke out in December 2020 after the accidental death of a 27-year-old intern surgeon due to a malfunctioning elevator in a hospital in a disadvantaged region of the northwest of the country. And a study published in 2020 by a young doctoral student in medicine points out that the brain drain affects all types of doctors and paramedics, exacerbating the shortages, especially in the least developed regions.
Si on veut comptabiliser un petit peu,
I took over the direction of the National Medical Council 2 years ago. In 2018, we were already closing on 60% of departures. By the end of 2020, nearly 80% of young graduates were abroad.
Pas loin des 80% des jeunes diplômés qui sont en train de partir. Les pouvoirs publics
Public authorities do with the means they have, and they don't have any. The health budget barely represents 6% of the GDP. It has decreased. So there is a problem with care. If you want manpower, you need to pay these people.
Travailler, il faut payer ces gens-là.
Doctors in Tunisia have lamented that the country's hiring staff with such skills take advantage of free human capital very qualified.
Je vais être très franc. Que nos diplômés migrent à l'étranger.
I will be very frank. The fact that our graduates migrate abroad can be considered part of a macroeconomic approach to the country as exporting services, but it has to be controlled so the government and the people can gain from it, either positive or negative.
Se retrouvent aussi bien dans les avantages que dans les désavantages. Y aller.
We need to go ahead with this exporting approach, but with partnership and cooperation protocols. I think that on a strategic level, it is a Tunisian national tradition. We must recover it. We will not export doctors just like that out in the open, but there are opportunities, especially since the WHO has developed a protocol for the internationalization of services.
According to the Minister of Health, Fauzi Mehdi, the health sector currently needs 3,000 medical and paramedical staff to cope with the pandemic. But already a warning shot was given by the Secretary General of the Tunisia General Union of Labour, UGTT, Nordin Tabobi, who said that 800 doctors left the country in 2018, that 900 other doctors did the same in 2019, and that 2,700 will set sail in 2022, further increasing the deficit of a sector already suffering from the exodus of 1,500 doctors. This emigration aggravates the crisis of the public health sector, given the lack of recruitment of doctors during the years of 2017 and 2018. Indeed, the precarious socio-economic situation, the fall of the dinar and the downing of the investment climate, as well as insecurity, remains the main factor that promotes the brain drain in Tunisia. The downing of the situation of public health, including its marginalization to the benefit of the private sector, has caused thousands of doctors to leave the country every year. As an example, 45% of young doctors among 400 registered in 2017 at the Council of the Order of Physicians in Tunisia have left the country, a phenomenon that extends to medical students abroad, of which 55% refuse to return to the country. It is worth recalling in this context the words of the former Minister of Health, Imed Hamami, who expressed concerns about the brain drain that plagues the sector. He has in this sense admitted that the state is unable to retain doctors, including seniors who represent 16% of doctors in public health. Namkana Samuel, Switch TV.
Away from that, the president of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Felix Tshisekedi, hosted foreign ministers from Ethiopia, Egypt and Sudan in Kinshasa to resume negotiations on the Ethiopian mega dam on the Blue Nile, which is a vital hydroelectric plant for Addis Ababa, perceived as a threat by Cairo and Khartoum.
On this solemn and special occasion of the continuation of the tripartite negotiations between Egypt, Ethiopia and Sudan on the issue of the Great Renaissance Dam, I would like to express my gratitude to all your delegations for having accepted the invitation of the Democratic Republic of Congo and the African Union, our mother organization, even going so far as to brave the risks associated with the COVID-19 pandemic that is raging throughout the world. In the name of the higher interests of the search for peace, convivial, friendly, and fraternal understanding and cooperation between sister countries and peoples.
Well, time to take a breather. Stay with us here on Africa Focus. Still to come. Libya authorities release 120 captured pro-Haftar fighters. Welcome back to Africa Focus. My name is Joel Church and our sign language interpreter is Tracy Dorcas. This week in our Africa Roundup stories, thousands of people flee a town in northern Mozambique following a large-scale insurgent attacks near Africa's largest single investment. Elsewhere, a large bunker is floated again to open up at the Suez Canal, and in Cape Town, a handful of body surfers get closer to the waves. Take a look.
More than 8,000 people have been rescued a week after Islamist insurgents attacked the northern Mozambican town of Palma. Thousands still remain stranded after armed militants raided the coastal town, beheading residents and ransacking buildings as people fled into the forest.
It was a difficult experience. It was a massacre. I don't think any of us want to go back there. Many people died. Some stayed behind. I can't say if they died, because for the moment they're still missing.
Survivors arrive by boat to the port of Pemba, to the south. Large numbers of people remain desperate for news of their loved ones.
I am waiting here with other families. We don't know if our relatives are on the boats that are coming, but we are here. We are not losing hope.
Since 2017, armed groups have been terrorising this region, which borders Tanzania. However, attacks have gained momentum over the past year, increasing in number and worsening the humanitarian crisis which blights the north of the country. According to the UN, more than 670,000 people have already fled because of the unrest. Palma is around 10 kilometres from a multi-billion-dollar liquefied natural gas project led by French firm Total. The company had already suspended operations and evacuated some staff in late December after jihadists launched a series of raids near its compound. Total had just announced plans to progressively resume work hours before the most recent attack. At last, it's on the move. A 200,000-ton container ship stuck in the Suez Canal has finally been freed after blocking the vital trade route for a week. A flotilla of tugboats, excavators dredging up sand, and an international team of almost 200 people mobilised day and night were finally able to free the Ever Given on Wednesday evening.
I officially announced the reopening of the Suez Canal to start working on both sides from 6 p.m. today.
The blockage, caused after the vessel became wedged diagonally across the canal during a sandstorm, prevented more than 400 heavily laden ships from passing through. 10% of the world's trade passes through this route. For its part, Egypt lost between $12 and $15 million each day while the canal was closed. Abdel Fattah al-Sisi made assurances that Egypt will acquire all the necessary equipment to prevent such an incident from happening again. Supporters of former Ivorian President Laurent Gbagbo erupted in cheering after the International Criminal Court on Wednesday upheld his acquittal on charges of crimes against humanity.
We say that the whole of Africa has been liberated today. It's the whole of Africa, but especially Ivory Coast. That is why we are going crazy. This day will remain carved in our memories.
The prosecution appealed after Gbagbo was acquitted in 2019. The former head of state refused to hand over power to rival Alassane Ouattara, who won elections in 2010. Gbagbo, who's been living in Belgium, is now cleared to return home and make a possible comeback in politics. Sarah Obama, the woman former US President Barack Obama used to call Granny, has died in Kenya, aged 99. She was the third wife of the former leader's Kenyan grandfather, but the pair were unrelated by blood. Once a simple countrywoman, she rose to global fame following Obama's election in 2008, and her modest homestead became a tourist attraction. Sarah Obama will be buried on Tuesday, in line with Islamic traditions.
At first glance, this is a typical early morning scene out in the bay in Cape Town. But these are not your average surfers. Using little more than their bodies in a wetsuit, boards nowhere to be seen, these are body surfers.
Freedom. Absolute freedom. Just you and the surf. Figure out where you have to be, what you have to do, and just ride the wave, ride the ocean. It's about being just you and the sea. It's great.
Just a child, yeah? Just nothing serious about it. Just fun.
Some body surfers use small paddles in the water to better navigate a wave and stay stable. But in this stripped-back sport, you can never blame a bad session on the equipment.
I think it's more about positioning, putting yourself in the right position to catch the wave and being in the right position on the wave. Yeah.
The simplicity of body surfing makes it a good bet for the oldest water gliding sport.
From what we know, Body surfing has a long history into pre-colonial Polynesian culture and even into pre-colonial African culture, the coastal cultures, which have documented ships' records when the Europeans were coming to do the early voyage of discovery and starting to trade along the west coast of Africa.
When he isn't in the water, Quibis Yobert makes surfboards, bodyboards and hand slides, the small paddles used by some body surfers. Even if they sell well, the market is small compared to classic surfing, and big brands have no real interest in the sport.
I think it's just that the big companies, the big corporates have not really discovered it. I think it's too basic, it's too simple. And in my words, it's too pure for them because there's too little product. There's too little probably profit for them to make.
Body surfing remains a low-key activity, far removed from the glamorous and trendy image of surfing. And that is exactly what Niels Havenhar loves about it. He is the only surfer out on this reef for the day.
I guess I've always liked it because there's less people do it. So it's not as crowded. It's easier.
And it's safer.
I don't know. I'm not sure. Have you ever done it? You should. That's fine.
2010-2011 post-election crisis in Ivory Coast react to the final acquittal of former Ivorian President Laurent Gbagbo by the international justice system, saying they are waiting for reparation from the ICC and the Ivorian government so that their hearts can be appeased.
Former Ivory Coast President Laurent Gbagbo appears to be on the fast track for homecoming after being utterly acquitted by the International Criminal Court. The ruling ends a legal saga that had enmeshed Gbagbo, 75 for nearly a decade, opening the door to what his supporters say will be a triumphant return. A deeply divisive figure, Gbagbo was hauled off to the ICC after being forced out of power in April 2011 following a brief civil war sparked when he refused to concede electoral defeat. Gbagbo's supporters, who have long clamored his innocence, have been campaigning for his early return, arguing that it will heal the country's wounds. Gbagbo was forced out after 10 years in power by the current president, Alassane Ouattara, following a months-long conflict that claimed several thousand lives and split the country along north-south lines. But he retained strong support at home despite spending years behind bars in The Hague, as well as time in Brussels, where he awaited the outcome of an appeal against his 2019 acquittal. It was last year that Gbagbo positioned himself for a potential comeback, casting himself as a conciliatory figure. He warned of the risk of catastrophe as storm clouds brewed ahead of presidential elections. But deep-seated distrust persists towards Gbagbo among Ivorians who say he plunged in the country into chaos.
Mon camion a été brûlé. J'ai été tiré, il y a 4 balles dans ma tête.
My truck was burned. There are 4 bullets in my head, so I'm a victim. But when I read the Quran, I forgave the one who did the evil. The evil is already done. I was well. I lost an eye. There was a bullet that went into my eye, but I pray to the good God until I'm dead.
Mais je prie bon Dieu, tant que je ne suis pas mort.
Ils ont libéré Gbagbo.
They released Gbagbo. We the victims agree, we are not against it. If there is a minister of reconciliation, it means that we must go to reconciliation. But we the victims are waiting for reparation from the ICC and the Ivorian government so that our hearts can be appeased. There have been victims, there have been deaths. It hurts us, but if they accompany us, I think it can calm our hearts.
Si nous accompagnent, je pense que ça peut apaiser nos cœurs.
The acquittal is a decision that enshrines impunity. The victims believe that they have been taken for judicial ride.
Elles ont pensé valablement que M. Gbagbo et M. Blé Goudé étaient.
They thought that Mr. Gbagbo and Mr. Belehode were guilty and the court proved them wrong. What the victims must do now is to ask the international court to continue to seek the perpetrators of 3,000 deaths. The ICC's prosecutor has made this clear by his willingness to pursue the Ivorian case. The Ivorian case, notwithstanding the acquittal of the 2 accused, is not closed.
Nonobstant l'acquittement des 2 accusés, n'est pas clos.
The ICC's ruling indefinitely clears Gbagbo of 4 charges of crimes against humanity, including murder, persecution, and rape committed during the conflict.
Il n'y a rien. Il n'y a plus rien. Il n'est pas assassin.
There is nothing. There is nothing left. He's not a murderer. He's completely cleared. There was even an appeal. The prosecutor, Fatou Bensouda, was provoked to appeal the decision. She was humiliated yesterday. The Court of Appeal humiliated her, dismissed her yesterday.
President Gbagbo has always advocated justice. He was not afraid of international justice. He went to face the justice, and the justice today acquitted him. So I think it's a great victory for him.
He is not totally out of the legal woods. However, technically, he will be jailed on his return, having been sentenced in absentia to a 20-year term for looting the local branch of the Central Bank of West African states at the time. But this scenario seems unlikely.
Meanwhile, authorities in western Libya released 120 fighters from a rival eastern force, which is the latest move towards reconciliation in a UN-backed peace process aimed at ending years of violence. The men were fighting for the 107th Brigade under the command of Eastern military strongman Khalifa Haftar, who in April 2019 launched an offensive to seize Tripoli from a unity government dressed in loose white outfits and matching skullcaps. They were released following a ceremony in Zawiya, which is 45 kilometers east of Tripoli. It's a troubling political fable shot with a sophisticated aesthetic and Tunisia's first ever entry for the Academy Awards. The Man Who Sold His Skin, a part dark satire, a part romantic drama. The film tells the story of Lavlon, a Syrian refugee Sam Ali, who is able to travel to Europe thanks to a Faustian pact.
The character makes the link between the world of refugees and the world of art. There's a meeting between a refugee who wants to go to Europe and an artist who is looking for a refugee because he has a conceptual idea. So their meeting makes this refugee meet this very close world of the contemporary art by an improbable duo.
J'aime la contradiction et j'aime le paradoxe et je l'utilise pour...
I like contradiction and I like paradox, and I use it to give birth to characters. And so the characters in the film, the Belgian artist, the Syrian refugee, the Syrian lover, the gallery owner, who we don't know where she comes from, they are me who resembles me to the pushed extreme.
Qui me ressemble, mais poussé à l'extrême. Et donc on s'est dit, Soraya, c'est pas une blonde, c'est une fausse blonde, en fait.
Soraya, she is not a blonde, in fact. She's a fake blonde. She's a brunette who we don't really know where she comes from. And there is like that something where she wants to be blonde. She wants to hide her origins. She wants to be cold, icy, because her job requires it. So we had fun drawing the character. Afterwards, I think there are quite a few men in the team who didn't like the idea of her being blonde because Monica is the most beautiful brunette in the world. And to make her blonde is blasphemy.
Bien sûr, je suis très contente.
I'm very happy. I mean, it's huge what's happening. But for me, it's really a way to be able to make the next films a little easier because it's not easy to make films. And I would like to reach the comfort that some directors have when they manage to edit their films quite easily.
Arrivent à monter leurs films assez facilement quand même.
Une quête d'un individu.
A quest of an individual who finds himself without the means to find the woman he loves. What prevents him from doing so is a visa. He finds himself in Lebanon as a refugee and he freelances in art galleries. And he is spotted by a certain famous artist who offers him a deal, namely to tattoo a Schengen visa on his back. It was the opportunity of a lifetime. Any actor dreams of having such a well-written role in such ambitious film with such a wide range of emotions for the character. It wasn't necessary to convince me. It was up to me to convince her that I was Sam Ali instead.
Well, that's all here on Africa Focus today, but keep the conversation going on our social media platforms. Switch TV Kenya, Joel Chacha M on Twitter as well on Facebook. Switch TV Kenya and Joel Chacha. Keep sending in your feedback via 111 And my director has been Joy Maureen, producer Harry Chimia, and my name is Joel Chacha, and our sign language interpreter is Tracy Dorcas. Until next time, do have a safe, great day.